Chapter 50 Mr. Xiantuk. Summary. Now, it's Mr. Xiantuk's turn. They'd spent an hour watching Fastel and Pyerpa say goodbye to their friends. Plans were made to visit, numbers exchanged. Mei had gotten the two of them their own phone-like device to chat with their friends on. And hugs given, but eventually, it was time to go. Time to head to their final goodbye. Izuku could feel tears already budding in his eyes as they walked through the scrapyard gate. It was hard enough to say goodbye to Alan. He wasn't sure how he was going to manage with Mr. Xiantuk. The man had given him a job, something he could do to help his friends. He'd helped Izuku regain some of his confidence with weapons training. He'd been there for him, talking sometimes for hours when organizing the dump got too plain. Izuku had heard about his time in the military, his first wife, when he got arrested for flying a ship on some kind of space shrooms. In turn, Mr. Xiantuk had learned about Izuku's mother, his crush back on Earth, and his time at UA. They didn't always understand the little intricacies of each other's tales due to the differences between their cultures, but they'd still grown close. And hell, his generosity was the whole reason they were able to afford a ship. And now, they were leaving. Just like Alan, Mr. Xiantuk almost seemed to be waiting for them. Sitting calmly on the porch of the dump's little building, his eyes traced them pensively. He made his way down off the worn wood to their group of 8. "Finally got the old girl fixed up, I see," he said, lips upturned in a sad smile. "Thanks to you. Really, we can never thank you enough." Izuku spoke, already a little choked up. "Nah," the purple sentient replied. "You lot were the ones who worked real hard, and now you're ready to take on the universe. You even look like superheroes in those new clothes." Izuku smiled warily. That meant more than the man could ever know. After so long stuck on the planet, they were going to start making their way back to Earth, and they were going to be heroes again, even if that meant leaving the people they cared about behind. This was always going to be temporary. They were always going to leave in the end. Izuku was just grateful that he'd gotten to meet these amazing people in the first place. While this chapter of his life might be over, he would never forget it. He couldn't. This time in his life, the people around him made him who he is, helped him heal from his past hurts. He would miss them, but who knows? Maybe they'll see each other again someday. The universe works in mysterious ways. He'd ended up in space, light years away from home, so who knows what could happen at this point? Knowing that still didn't make saying goodbye any easier. Izuku couldn't help himself when he surged forward and wrapped Mr. Xiantuk up in a tight hug. Much like Alan had done, the others weren't far behind to join the group. Much like with Alan, the others weren't far behind to join in on the embrace. Well, Kachan kinda just gave the group a one-armed hug, but that was more than Izuku had expected. The man smelled of grease and something almost smoky. Not scents traditionally considered nice, but they gave Izuku comfort. There were soft sniffles from all around, mixing with the ever-present background noise of the town. Warm, big hands carted through his hair affectionately. "There's no doubt you'll take the universe by storm. Go up there, kick some ass, and take some names," Mr. Xiantuk said softly, disembarking from the tight hug at last. Tears were flowing full force by now, and Izuku made no attempt to stop them. It would be useless. "I'll miss you," Izuku whispers. Tail swishing calmly behind him, the furry man smiled. "And I'll miss you too, especially around the dump. You've done so much great work, a lot more than I would have ever expected. Every morning when I got up to go to the dump, I'll look at the organized piles and think of the brightest green-eyed kid with a heart of gold." Izuku stared out of the now organized dump. He really had gotten to most of it. Izuku had hardly noticed. It wasn't as upfront of a transformation as when he'd cleaned the beach back on Earth. He was just organizing here. Now that he looked around, there were no longer mountains of chaotic trash, but clear sections with the appropriate scrap in each one. The other ships the dump had were prominently displayed up in the front, no longer only accessible after a trek through the trash piles and hidden under one of said piles of trash. It would be much easier for Mr. Zyuntuk to get sales now. And he'd done that all without his quirk, which he still didn't have back yet. He'd been so determined to get it back by the time they left the planet, but it seems like that wouldn't be the case. Gaining large amounts of muscle would be more difficult in space on their small ship, but he wasn't going to delay takeoff for his sake. He'd figure it out. Just like with Ayalin, they spent a few hours hanging out with Mr. Zyuntuk. Izuku was excited when Mr. Zyuntuk brought out that sweet drink Izuku liked. He reveled in the citrusy grape taste one last time. The drink was more of a local brand, so it would make getting it where they were going practically impossible. This was nice. He'd miss this. And just like that, time was up again. They had to leave for the last time. "Why don't we walk you to your ship?" Mr. Zyuntuk questions with a slight smirk. "Us?" Mina asks. Just then, a familiar figure walks up to the front gate. "We thought we'd send you off together," she says with a sweet smile. The warm feeling that had been persisting in Izuku's chest all day glowed. Even if it wasn't the best idea for them to go all the way to the ship, being walked to the edge of the forest would be nice. One last goodbye. "What do you mean you kids have been camping out in the forest for the past 3 months? Ayalin exclaimed, exasperation clear in her voice. Izuku had not really thought about how bad that sounds. They'd arrived at the edge of the forest, which had elicited questions about the whereabouts of their home. Questions that were predictable in hindsight, but none of them seemed to realize beforehand. It's not that bad, Ochako said. I promise it's safe, and we've been taking care of ourselves. Besides, we like the wide open space. It was nice after. Anyway, it's fine. Ayalin let out a tired sigh. Still, kids should not be living alone in the woods. If you told someone, we could have helped. I get it if you don't want to go to an orphanage or something, but there are programs that could have helped. Izuku knows Ayalin is just trying to be responsible, but they couldn't have done things like that. They were still on the run from apparently a centuries-old trafficking ring that probably spanned most of the known universe. It was imperative that they stay as off the record as possible. The kidnappers had shown them that they couldn't be too careful. They were so close to have being discovered, Mei only barely managing to scramble the outgoing message. So, as nice as help sounded, they didn't really have another option in their situation. At least none they could think of that would guarantee their safety. Well, it's too late for that now, Izuku said. Thank you all for your help. We'll never forget all you've done, and we'll make sure to message you and tell you about what we get up to. Wait, Mina said. Before we go, let's take a picture together. She propped up the tablet as best she could on a tree branch and put it on the countdown setting. Apparently, not even space had figured out a better way to take non-selfie photos on regular devices. Everyone tried their best to squeeze into the frame with Mina's instructions. Then, the timer was set and Mina rushed back. "Everyone smile!" Mina shouted. And they waited, and waited. How long did Mina set the timer for? Wait, did they not make a noise when it took a picture? Probably not. On Earth, that was an old holdover from digital cameras. Space probably didn't have something like that. So when had it taken a photo? The group moved towards the tablet after they'd had enough waiting. Katsuki scoffed. "Fucking hell, no one was looking at the camera." "Language," Ayalen scolded, oddly reminiscent of Ida. "It's just right," Mina squealed, and Izuku agreed. He liked that it didn't look perfect. It looked like them, the way they really were, and that was what Izuku wanted to remember. Because now, it was finally time to go. With one last group hug and enough tears to water their new plant, they were off into the forest. Izuku glanced back, just as they were almost out of sight, to see two figures standing by the edge, waving them off. The forest was quiet as they walked the trail, one worn into the ground over the months. A warm breeze threaded its fingers through the pink and green leaves. Izuku took a deep breath on the slightly sweet air. This would be their last trip through the forest. He brushed his fingers against a moss-covered boulder as they passed, just like every other time. Just like he had every other time. Walking this trail really had become a comforting routine. He'd miss it. But that just meant that they needed to create new routines. As they arrived at the ship, everyone paused. The wind swirled around them, as if offering its goodbye. Izuku smiled. Their time on this planet may be over, but it leads them one step closer to getting home. So with one last look at the sun-splattered forest, they stepped into the ship and closed the door behind them.